Hey besties. Okay, I am going to do a super quick like self-drafting primer tutorial today because I got this shirt from Old Navy and it's like cute and I like it, but it's annoying because I feel like it just doesn't fit me very well, and I am gonna try to remake another one that has the same vibe but fits me better. My biggest complaint about it is I feel like the shoulder straps are like totally in the wrong place. Like I'm constantly pulling them in because if I don't, like when the shirt is where it naturally hits, the straps are like so wide that I feel like they're constantly falling off, so I have to pull them in, but then when I pull them in, it leaves this big like gap in my shirt. So if I'm like bending over or whatever, I have this whole like loopy situation and it's just constantly like in the way. I feel like there's like a chute through my shirt. So the biggest thing I need to do is bring these straps in, and I'm literally just going to pinch out like what I feel like makes sense and like measure that pinch. And then when I'm drafting it on the paper, like I show you, I'll kind of get that measurement and apply it to what I'm doing. So then I have to think through, if I'm taking out this amount of ease in like the neckline, I'm probably going to need to add it back into the side seam so that I can still like get it over my head and over my body, which I think will work out well because this side seam is like pretty close into like my armpit. I could use a little bit of extra room there anyways. So I'm probably going to take this width out, add it back into the side seam here because I do like the overall width of the shirt, just not how wide these shoulder straps are. So that's the main thing I'm going to do. I'm probably going to make it slightly longer. I have like a somewhat long torso. I don't feel like where it's hitting me is like really awful, but I don't know. I'm gonna play around with adding maybe just a little bit of length to it. The back of the bodice actually fits me pretty well. So I don't think I'm really gonna change much about the back, but basically my goal is to trace this shirt, the front and the back of the shirt, make a few tweaks to it, look at the seams inside the shirt because there's kind of like this, you know, facing here. Look at the seams, look at how it might have been constructed, and then sort of just guess how I would remake the shirt. So I'm gonna show you how I trace the shirt, how I make my changes to it, and a quick like step-by-step of construction. And hopefully you can kind of apply the basic principles of what I'm doing to make your own clothes, self-draft your own clothes, and tweak like the garments in your closet that you love 90%, but just wish you could change these like little things about them and make your perfect wardrobe. I have my shirt here. I'm ready to start tracing it and get to all the fun stuff. But first, I just wanted to say a couple things. Most importantly, what I'm about to do here and show you is very much my like homegrown method for drafting your own clothes from your existing wardrobe. I have since learned a lot more technical and like official ways to draft patterns, especially digitally. So if you're interested in learning those like official, real great techniques that take a lot of like time and effort to learn, I took a course called Confident Pattern Making that I will link in the description, and that's like a full-blown like education in pattern making. So the things I learned there were amazing and great. Victoria and Jess, who run the course, are amazing. But if you just kind of want to try your hand at like making some random stuff, this will be great for you. You are about to witness a lot of slapdashery, which brings me to my next point, that you have permission to be slapdash. When you are learning to sew, learning to self-draft things, you are absolutely allowed to experiment with things, try random things out. I want you to feel like you don't need to be doing things a certain way. So even though in this example, I am making this shirt, the purpose of this tutorial is not to show you how to make this shirt. The purpose is to show you how I would go about taking a garment that I already own and drafting a new pattern for it. So whatever garment you are going to make, whether it's a shirt or pants or whatever, the principles will stay the same. Just use your critical thinking skills, make hypotheses. That's kind of what I do when I'm self-drafting, is I'm sort of just guessing at how things will work, and then I make samples and see if they do. So don't expect the very first one you make to be perfect. Most likely you'll make at least one like sample draft version before you have your official perfect beautiful garment. Okay, amazing. Now we are going to jump into drafting this shirt. So basically what I'm going to start out doing, I folded it in half. That will just help keep everything symmetrical. So I've turned it inside out and kind of like looked at the seams and guessed as to how the construction will work out. Basically, there's like 3 or 4 pattern pieces. There's gonna be a front shirt piece, a back shirt piece, and then you can see this like yoke situation we have going on here. The back of the shirt isn't constructed the same. The back has like this facing here and then this like bias binding there. I've decided after looking at all the seams, I'm just going to finish the front and back the same way with this like yoke piece. I feel like ultimately that will be easier. I was looking at like the seams in here and I was just having a hard time reverse engineering how it was put together. But the yoke thing, I feel pretty confident I know how that works. So that'll just be a bit of a burrito method, which if you haven't heard that before, I'll like loosely show how I'm constructing that. So like I said, a front shirt piece, a back shirt piece, and then I'm going to have one of these yoke facing things for the front and a yoke facing thing for the back. And I feel like that's all the pattern pieces I'm going to need. And since these yokes are, you can see it's like the same shape as this front neckline, I will use the neckline that I'm drafting to make that yoke. So basically I'm gonna draft a front and a back piece and then make those other yokes from the pattern pieces I'm drafting. Okay, let's jump into the front. So first I'm just going to draw like a straight line here. And my cutting mat, you can kind of see through the paper, which is really, really helpful. I got this sheet of paper from Target. It was just like in the random craft aisle, but I'm sure you could find rolls of paper wherever, tape together other papers, do what you gotta do. Oh, also I'm gonna add seam allowance at the end. So right now I'm just tracing what size the actual shirt is. You'll also notice there is a dart in the pattern, and this is where some slapdashery comes in. I could trace this front piece of the shirt and then like do all the appropriate dart markings and like cut the pattern and swivel it, blah, 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 like all of the official things that I should do. But what I'm gonna do instead, you can see this hemline curves up a bit, and that's because of this dart. Like it would just go straight if this dart wasn't here, right? Like this would be pulled down. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to mark kind of where this hem is and do a straight line under it. Because if there was no dart here, it would be straight. And then I'm going to kind of add in this dart. So this is the line. And then I'm also going to make a little point here where the dart comes to a point. Also gonna make a line here so I can see how wide the dart is. I'll figure that out later. Okay, that looks about right. And then to get this strap, I'm kind of gonna fold this back and mark some like key points of the neckline, and then I'll connect them all. Okay. I also want to mark that the shoulder seam here is like lower on the front than it is on the back. So I'll mark that. I feel like that should be good. So things we need to change. I'm first going to make the changes that I want to make, and then I'm going to add seam allowance after that. So I know for sure the biggest thing is I want to bring the straps over, and then that means I'll have to extend the side seam there. But what I'm going to do is I pinched out, like I showed when I did the try on, I pinched out how much I wanted the straps to go in by. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this center fold in by that much instead of actually moving the strap. So I'll bring the fold in and then extend the side seam out. So when I did the pinch, I pinched out 2 inches, which is right like 1/2 inch on the fold. So I'm just gonna take 1 inch out of the center, which actually is a pretty significant amount, right? When you think about it, but you saw what I was pinching, like that's a lot. Okay, and then for the side seam, yeah, I feel like 1 inch is so much. I don't think I want to add a whole inch over. That seems like a lot. See, this is where hypothesis comes in. I'm feeling a gut instinct to maybe do 3/4 of an inch. So I'm gonna extend that 3/4 of an inch, and then like I said, I'm gonna be doing a first draft, which is like a toile is an official name for it. It's like a rough first version of a pattern. So I'm gonna start at 3/4 of an inch with the side seam, and then after I make my toile, if I feel like it's snug, then I can adjust it. I'm going to extend this line a bit there, and then also I feel like it was really like up in my armpits. So I'm gonna take it down, I don't know, maybe like 1/2 inch. There's 1/2 inch, and I'm kind of just going to make that curve longer. Sure. Okay, I also want to make the straps just a touch wider, mostly because the method of construction I'm going to use, called the burrito method, I'm going to need to pull the whole shirt through one of the straps, and I'm gonna need a little extra space. Also, I feel like that could be cute just in general. So I'm gonna widen the strap just a tad. I might do like 3/8 of an inch. So I'm gonna just like measure out some spots 3/8 of an inch from the strap as it is, and then just kind of connect the dots. And then it can kind of ease better. All right, we're getting a lot of lines here. I'm gonna start erasing some. And then I actually think I'm gonna lengthen it just a tad. I feel like I have a bit of a long torso, so where it hit me was like good-ish, but I feel like I was pulling it down, and then with the neckline, it was all kind of just like, I don't know. So I'm gonna lengthen it a little bit, and I might regret it, but that's okay. I can just change it back. It's always better to have a little extra length than not enough. So I'm just gonna bring that down 1/2 inch. Actually, I'm gonna line it up with my grid. It's like 5/8 of an inch. Okay. I feel like this is good. I'm just gonna draw the dart now. So the dart, when it's finished, is about 1 inch wide. Darts are tricky. I'm very lucky in a lot of ways because I'm small chested. Poses other issues for drafting patterns, but in this instance, darts aren't super duper necessary for me, and it's not a huge deal if they're not perfect. So this is definitely going to be the most unofficial dart you've ever seen, and it's not going to be perfect, and that is okay. Again, if I try it on and it fits weird and I might be able to tell ways to fix it, I can, but I feel like it's gonna be fine. Also, I feel like because I'm quite small chested, 1 inch seems like a lot for a dart. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mark it 3/4 of an inch instead. Okay, time out, yikes. I just drafted the dart. You can probably see the erase marks, and then I realized I completely messed up the placement of these lines. So I'm going to do it again, and I'm sort of leaving it in. I considered like cutting this whole thing off and starting over, but I feel like this is a very realistic peek into my messed up process where I keep doing things wrong. So redo, redo, redo. So we're gonna do it 3/4 of an inch wide, the dart. I had made this the middle line of the dart, but it's actually the top line of the dart. That will be the middle line, and then we'll need to measure down another 3/4 of an inch for the bottom line. Okay, I'm feeling better now. Okay, so now we have these 3 lines of the dart. Now, darts have this like witch's hat shape to them that there are very like mathematical correct ways to figure out like where all the points should be and everything. Again, if you want to learn that stuff, I have a great resource for you. But for the purposes of this, I just want to do a quick and easy version. So I'm kind of just guess, and it probably won't line up perfectly, but it'll be close enough. And again, because my body type just doesn't have a huge need for a dart anyway, I feel like it's probably gonna be fine. And if I mess it up really bad, I can fix it after I make my first toile. That might not be quite steep enough of a witch's hat, but I feel like it'll be fine. So the top line and the bottom line will be the two lines that meet together when the dart pinches in half, and then that middle line there will be like the fold line where they pinch on. I also just brought this curved line of the armhole down so that when the seam meets up here, it's going in at a right angle, so it won't be like at a point. So anywhere your seams meet, you should try to square it off, make it a right angle. Okay, the last thing I need to do is add seam allowances. So basically, I'm just gonna use my brain to think through the construction of this shirt and think, where are the seams gonna be? This side is a fold, so there's no seam there. In fact, maybe I'll write it. My great handwriting. Ooh, this hem will be pretty big. I like the depth of this hem here. So it's a 1-inch hem, and then there's probably like at least ½ an inch folded under that. I almost wanna make it a little bigger. Let's do 1.5 inch wide hem, and then we need to add another ½ an inch tucked under that. So 2 inches in total. Okay, and then for the side seam, when I sew for myself personally, I usually do like 3/8 of an inch. Sometimes that's a bit small for people, but this project is very much for me. So I'm just gonna do 3/8 of an inch. For the curved lines, because I don't have like a curvy ruler, I just mark little spots that are that far away and then kind of connect them. So we have all of our seam allowances. I'm not gonna erase the inner lines just so I have documentation of where they're supposed to be. So I'm going to cut this out. All right, there is the front piece. I am gonna go ahead and trace the basic outline of the back piece and then meet you back here since you already kind of know how that all goes. All right, I have folded and traced this back of the shirt. So with it folded with the back out like this, you can really tell that the front is much wider than the back actually. Like the front piece is kind of scrunched up in there, and especially with the straps, you can see how far out these front straps go. Like they're almost completely beyond where the back arm line ends, which I thought was really interesting and also explains so much as to why they fit so wide on me. I'm not sure why Old Navy did it that way. I mean, I can understand maybe a little bit of extra ease in the front, but it's like so much extra. The first thing we need to do is copy over any adjustments that we made on the front that will affect the back, right? Like I made a list of them. We need to like lengthen the hem because we lengthened it a bit on the front. We need to lower the armpit a bit, etc. So I'm gonna start doing those. So you can see here, this is the front bodice. You can see my erased line of where the first hem was and how far I brought it down. So I'm just gonna copy that over. And then the armpit we brought down ½ an inch, I think, if I'm remembering right. So I'm gonna bring that down ½ an inch. Okay, so there's that line. For this, because the strap is gonna end up wider, that looks good. And then I'm going to extend this strap over 3/8 of an inch because we made the front strap 3/8 of an inch wider. Okay, so we've done those 3 things. Extend the strap. Okay, so when the side seam and the hem are lined up here, you can see that this shoulder seam, like we said, is coming farther forward on the front than it is on the back. So I brought it down a bit on the back, and then I need to kind of add that back here. It's about ½ an inch. So I'm just gonna take this up. I'm not gonna take it up quite ½ an inch because let's see. I brought it down for the front. I don't think I did it 1/2 inch for the front. I'm gonna move it up about 3/8 of an inch. That feels a bit better to me. Okay, we've done that, extended that strap. Okay, the dart. So because we have a dart on this side, we need to account for this 1.5 inches here that's gonna be pinched. Okay, so I need to make sure that this side seam is 1.5 inches smaller than this side seam as it is. So if I line up, oh look, it actually is pretty close. So you can see this here. It's about 1 inch. It's like almost 1 inch. We'll call it 1 inch here, but it needs to be 1.5 inches. So this is actually what I'm going to do. This, again, is a very hodgepodge way to do this. What I need to do is make this side seam 1.5 inches shorter. I could either do it from the armpit, which we just took down, or not 1.5 inches, 1/2 inch. We could either take it from here, or take it from here, or you could extend this 1/2 inch. But since I've already cut that out, I don't want to worry about that. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to take it out from the bottom hem here. Again, this is a hypothesis. I feel like it will be fine. But when I wear this shirt, the back hem actually does come, it like hangs lower than the front. And there's probably a bunch of reasons for that. But I'm going to see. If I take it out here, I think it'll be fine. I'm going to run with that hypothesis and we'll see how it goes. I just took this hem down. I'm going to take it back up. So the way that this back neckline works, okay, remember how we're going to do a yoke, right? Like this yoke facing situation. If we do it for the back also, and the back stays high like this, the yoke is gonna end here. They're gonna touch, it's gonna like meet up there, which means I'll have this big panel of a yoke facing that's gonna feel weird with this high neckline. So I think what I wanna do is bring the neckline down a bit, not quite as low as the front, but I do wanna bring it down a smidge. So let's bring the neckline down. And I feel like this is actually a really great example because I get a lot of questions about editing patterns naturally. And a lot of the times it's like, how would I make this leg narrower? How would I bring this neckline down? How would I make this sleeve longer? How would I, whatever, what have you? Because also I know that you're all not making this shirt. You're probably working on whatever garment you have that you're trying to edit. So no matter what the principle is of like what you're trying to do, 95% of the time, the answer to that question is just draw it differently. Like, how do I lower this neckline? I'm just gonna draw a new neckline. Or how do I taper pants? Just draw the lines in closer. How do I make this bodice shorter? Just draw the line of the bodice shorter. Like, I feel like people overthink a lot of like how to do things like the right way. Shed that mindset. We're not concerned about like the right or correct way to do things most of the time. Just like ask yourself when you're trying, when you wish you had an expert person to ask yourself the question. Like, how would I move this neckline down? Well, how do you think? Like, what would be your best guess? And then try that. Hopefully that comes off the right way. I feel like you guys, you get me. Okay, so the front neckline, let's see where that comes to. If the front neckline is that low, I don't want it that low. I think I'll put it up maybe a couple inches from there. Okay, so there's that. And I do want to square it off a little because I do quite like the squarish look of the front shirt. Actually, that was pretty good. That's actually pretty good. No, I'm happy with that. Okay, cute. So it'll be a little square low neckline situation. I like it. All I have left to do is add in the seam allowances, which are going to be the same as the front. So we have, what did we say, 2 inches here. I know I drew like 10 lines on this, so that's kind of confusing, but the bold one is the final. Okay, there's 2 inches there, and then we'll do 3/8 of an inch along the side, 3/8 of an inch, 3/8, and 3/8. And then this is on the fold. Okay, I'm gonna do all that and cut it out, and then we'll do the yokes. All right, so to draft the yokes, the first thing I've done is I've just traced like the top part of this pattern piece. So moving that out of the way, we now have this shape here. So basically what I need to do, you can see the yoke here is just, also, is yoke the right word? I don't know. Now that I've said it so many times, it probably isn't, but that's just what I'm calling it. So it comes down just a little bit past the armhole, and it looks like pretty much a straight line. This one comes down like an inch, but then there's also seam allowance sucked into that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring it down 1.5 inches. I also feel like that one seems pretty small. I'll mark that there. And then I'm gonna square off the line here to start. I'm just making a straight-ish line from there, but I think what I'm gonna end up doing is kind of like curving the line a little bit. Yeah, okay. I feel like that will work fine. I know it looks a little bit wonky, but we need this to be squared off and we need that to be squared off. So that works. I've also already done the back one. This is traced out from the back pattern piece that we made, and I made this curved line much more exaggerated because if I didn't curve it up like that, it really would be like a whole shelf of a yoke piece, and I felt like I didn't want it to be like this. I didn't want like this thick line like right across the center of my back. So I feel like the way that this is curved probably won't be as noticeable. I don't know, we'll see. Again, this is all just a hypothesis. So I'm gonna cut this out, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a toile, which, like I said, is just your like first draft example trial piece. But I'm not even going to do the yokes or like finish the construction. I'm just going to cut the front and back pieces and then sew the side seams and the shoulder seams just to get an initial like, how is the general shape fitting me? And then if that all is good to go, then I will make an official version where I put the yokes in it, finish all my seams, hem it, the whole 9 yards. So I'll meet back here once I have the toile done. I have finished the first toile. So just for reference, I sewed up the side seams, the shoulder seams, and then I hemmed it, but just pinned it in place. And then the seams around the neckline and armholes, I just cut off the seam allowance so that the line will like land where it will be once the seams are done. But I didn't put the yoke into this version. So let's walk through the changes that I'm going to make. I feel like it's in a pretty good starting place, honestly. There's just a few things I'm gonna tweak. So I feel like I was a bit conservative on this front section here. I feel like the straps come at a better place now than they did before. Before they were like literally falling off. So I feel like it's better, but honestly, I still feel like it could come in just a bit and it would be even better. So I'm actually gonna take out another 3/4 inch. So like when I'm pinching, in total I'm pinching out 1.5 inches, but I'll cut 3/4 inch off of that center fold line. Okay, I feel like that makes it look funny, but that will help like assess the fit when I'm talking about the rest. So the armpit area I feel like isn't too bad. It maybe it's just a little bit loose-ish. I don't know. I mean, it's really not that bad. But yeah, see like that, I just feel like I maybe took it down a bit too much. So I think instead of raising it, because if you remember, I lowered the armpit and I added extra width to this side seam. So I'm not gonna run back both of those changes, but I think what I'm going to do is just take it in like 1/2 inch. And that will kind of raise it a little bit on its own. But I think if I just pinch out that 1/2 inch, that gives it a little bit of a better armhole shape. So I'm gonna make that change. I'm gonna take out 1/2 inch here, really be 1 inch in total, 1/2 inch from the back and 1/2 inch from the front pattern piece. But I do like the width where the hem is at, and Plus this will be pinched out a little bit. I don't want this to be narrower. Like I don't want to take in any of that seam allowance on the side seam down by my hem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it in a 1/2 inch here at the side seam, but then taper it out. Like I'll just make it draw a slanted line. So 1/2 inch in from here, but I'm gonna taper it so that the hem of the top stays the same width, minus this little bit in the middle I'll be taking out. Okay, other than that, the only other change I'm going to make is where the dart ends. It is like slightly high, but not high enough that I'm mad about it. And honestly, for a really hodgepodgey dart, I feel like it looks pretty good. It's fine. But I do think it comes really far forward. So I'm just gonna move it back like 1 inch, maybe 1/2 inch. Yeah. So I'll just move the point of the dart on the front pattern piece back 1/2 inch and then redraw those angled lines to meet up at the new point. And then as far as things that look good, I lengthened the hem a little bit and I really like where it hits. I feel like it's good. And do you remember I took off length at the back hem to make the side seams line up, and I was like a little bit curious to see how that turned out, and it looks totally fine. Because like I said, with the Old Navy one, I swear the back hem was like way lower than the front hem, and now I feel like it is even a little bit lower than the front, but like, yeah, it looks good. So that worked out. See, we're just hypothesizing and seeing if it works. And this time it did. What else? The back neckline I think is good. I also really like that the back is a bit baggier. That's how the original one was, but I do like that, especially since, you know, you want to have some ease in the back so that when you're like bending over, right, you have that like movement that you don't need as much in the front. And then the other thing that I think turned out really good is where the shoulder seam ended up on my shoulder. You want this like really at the ridge, like the top ridge of your shoulder. And you'll remember we did like the back pattern piece came forward a bit on the shoulder, and then the front piece we adjusted to kind of meet at that spot. Most people's shoulders are like curved a little bit that way, so that that side seam will end up a bit forward. So I feel like that is good to go. Honestly, I feel like this toile is close enough that once I make all those really minor adjustments, I feel good enough to go ahead and make a final version. But if this is something that you're kind of learning, self-drafting is sort of new to you, I think if you try something on and you're gonna make little tweaks like this, I would make a second sample before cutting into like your final good fabric. Also, this is a great time when making a toile to use your like cheaper fabric or like bed sheets or fabric you got from the thrift store or whatever, because like this is cute enough, and like I could kind of tweak it and unpick things and whatever. I probably won't go to the effort anytime soon, but anyways, I would hate to like waste your really nice fabric, so keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to cut the final one, make all those changes, cut the final one, and then I'll walk through very lightly the construction, because the purpose of this tutorial is not how to construct this top, it's how to kind of walk through the self-drafting process. So let's jump into that.
This is the point that I've gotten to so far. I'll just kind of recap what I've done. First off, I did the darts. So you pinch the darts so that the top line and bottom line match up, coming to that point, and then just stitch along the dart line. Then I've attached the front bodice and back bodice together at the shoulder seams with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, because that's what I added into the pattern when I drafted it. Then I did the same thing with the front and back yoke pieces. I attached them at the shoulder seams with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now what we need to do is lay those two pieces together, right sides together, and I'm going to be stitching around the neckline. So the purpose of the yoke is to finish the neckline and armhole seams seamlessly. So you'll kind of see how I do that, but the first thing I need to do is stitch around the neckline, and then we are going to jump into the burrito method, which the neckline is also a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So here's that neckline all stitched up, and I did pre-iron it, that's why it looks kind of bubbled up that way. I also finished off the raw curved edges of the yoke with my serger, And then at the like squared off-ish curves of the neckline, I've cut these little snips here, which when you turn it inside out will just help that curve be a little bit smoother. So we're gonna flip that neckline the right way around. So this time wrong sides are facing each other. And we are now going to finish off the armholes with the burrito method. So first thing you need to do when it's all splayed out like this is roll up from one side like a burrito. And then you're going to encase that burrito that you just made within one of the shoulder straps. So you can see here, I'm kind of splaying out the two layers of the shirt. There's like the shirt pieces on one side, the yoke pieces on another side, and you're going to kind of flip the shirt pieces over on top of the yoke pieces, encasing that burrito. We'll be sewing along the armhole here, which is kind of like a U shape at the moment. So I'm pinning along that edge, and while you're pinning, just be mindful that you are sewing along this edge, so you don't want any of the burrito to be stuck close to the edge. Like you don't want it to get caught up in your needle. So this is also going to be a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, so I've given plenty of room so that none of that burrito gets caught up where it shouldn't be. This is what it looks like all sewn up, and now the fun part is we get to pull the entire shirt out through the strap. It doesn't matter which side you pull it out of. So you can see here, kind of just tugging. This is why I made my strap a little bit extra wide, because if it's too narrow, it's gonna get stuck and you'll pop your stitches. So I'll just repeat exactly what I did on the other armhole here. And once that's done, you'll have something that looks like this. So my neckline and my armholes have a really, really nice finish to them. All that's left to do now is sew up the side seams and hem the top. So I'm gonna lay my tank here, wrong sides together, and I'm gonna pin along this side seam. And you'll see I'm going to be sewing up the side seams again with the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and it kind of goes straight up through that yoke bit. And this is what that looks like all finished. So you see the side seams are stitched up, they're finished with my serger, and then the yoke bit goes all the way around the armhole. One thing I thought about doing after the fact was I might top stitch along the neckline and armholes, so TBD, I may end up doing that. All that's left to do now is hem it and it will be finished.
All right, the top is done. I feel like it turned out really good. It fits me really well. The biggest issue of the straps is resolved. Before I jump into fit too much though, I did want to give a bit of a disclaimer. So I used this like white linen, right? It's obviously like a little bit see-through, not crazy see-through, but this like line is pretty prominent. The hem is pretty prominent. Obviously, yes, that is just the way this fabric is a little bit, but I think it's important to remember right when you finish making something like fresh off your sewing machine, it has been ironed within an inch of its life. Especially using the burrito method, like I have ironed this thing pancake flat multiple times over the last like hour. So that makes fabric, this fabric in particular, the most like see-through it's going to be. So once I throw it in the washing machine and it kind of wrinkles up a tad, you know, loses some of that like seriously ironed flat appearance, it won't be quite so see-through. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer because yes, like I feel like these lines and like you can see that yoke in the back through the shirt, they won't be as prominent, and obviously you're gonna be able to see it even after it's washed, but it's just not as obvious. But even when you will be able to see it a little bit, I don't really mind it. I feel like it looks kind of cute. And I am glad in the back, remember how I like curved the yoke in the back? I'm glad I did that because I wouldn't want like, it would literally look like a shelf because it would be coming down like super long. Anyways, so disclaimer around that. And also with the ironing aspect, it is gonna give it a bit of a crisper, looser feel because it's been ironed so much. So after I wash it, it'll be a little more wrinkly, a little bit more opaque, and it will also fit me slightly snugger. Something to keep in mind. If you feel like something you've just made is a tad loose or a tad transparent, throw it in the wash and then see how you feel after that. Okay, after that disclaimer, let's talk about fit. So I feel like it fits me really well. The biggest thing were the straps. The straps are perfectly placed. I'm glad I took it in again from the center. I wouldn't want it pinched in anymore. I feel like it's perfect where it's at. I really like the width of the shirt. I'm glad I kind of kept that at the bottom and didn't bring it in too much more. I also feel like where the hem falls is really good. This is like at my natural waist. This is like my belly button here. And I actually ended up hemming it 1 3/4 inches instead of 1.5 inches, just kind of on a whim. But yeah, I feel like it looks good. It would be really easy to make like a cropped version if I wanted to do like a really, really short one, or it would also be really easy to maybe add like a peplum bottom. It fits over my head well, so all that stuff is good. The armpit area I also feel like is pretty good. It's loose-ish, but the original was like way too tight. Like if you remember, it was like really up all in my business. And so there's a lot more like range of motion now, you know, when I'm like leaning over things or whatnot. So I feel like the armpits are good. The only thing that I'm considering changing on the paper pattern after this try on is I might take the shoulder seam up like half an inch. Like I might just take half an inch off that, and I feel like that would put the armpit like a perfect place, and also just have this general area be a little bit less loose. But I don't know, it's like, I think what I'm going to do is wear it all day today and then wash it and maybe wear it one more day and like see if I feel like it's worth taking this up. Because honestly, once I wash it, I could feel like it fits fine, and that's not an issue. So hopefully you were able to kind of see the differences between the original, the first draft I made, and this final version. I am really, really happy with how it turned out, and hopefully watching that process makes it a little bit less intimidating to try something like this on your own. I also wanted to answer just a few like FAQs that I get about self-drafting a lot. One thing that I'm asked a lot about is lining. Like what do I do if I want to line something? I personally don't do a ton of lining, but if I were to try it, I feel like most of the time you could just double up on your pattern piece and like baste 2 layers of the same fabric together. So for example, this shirt, I could have cut 2 fronts and 2 backs instead of doing a yoke. And honestly, that would have like worked out pretty well, I guess. I would have just had to do the burrito method for the whole 2 layers instead of just like this little yoke, and then I would have had to do something funky maybe with the hem. So yeah, that's kind of what I would assume. But again, I don't do a lot of lining, which I think leads me into my next point about self-drafting in general, but lining is a good example. If you are trying to figure out an aspect of construction or changing something when self-drafting and you're not quite sure how to go about it, like you know the end result, you know what you want to finish with, but you're not sure how to get there, I would honestly, like obviously Google around as best you can, but even like watching YouTube videos where people are making a similar item to what you're making, just watching how they're constructing things can give you ideas, or even like help narrow down what you don't want the construction to be. For example, last summer I was making a top that was actually kind of similar to this, and it had like ties open on the side. And I know there are patterns for it, but just the way my brain works, I'm like, I'll just figure it out. And I got to the point of trying to like close the side seams, and I wasn't quite sure how to do it the way that I was imagining. And so I literally was looking up like how to make a tie top or whatever on YouTube. And even though no one was making like the exact type of shirt that I was making, people were making similar things. So I would like kind of watch their process, and then specifically like the portions where they were like finishing off the side seams or whatever to just like get ideas. So you don't need somebody showing you like step by step exactly what you're doing to get inspiration or instruction from other people. So if you're trying to line something or do a seam a certain way or whatever, I would just look up YouTube videos or go on Pinterest or Google things or whatever and try to find like similar types of construction or things that people are making. And worst case scenario, just guess and run with a hypothesis and see if it works. And chances are it will either work great and fine, or you'll learn something about the construction so that you'll know next time you want to do it a different way, and it'll probably give you clues as to how to proceed. Okay, last thing, I get asked a lot about fabrics, like what fabric is appropriate for what, whatever. If you're recreating something from your closet and you like the fabric that it is, I would definitely try to just do something similar, specifically with, like if you want to make a knit stretchy tank top, right? You wouldn't pick like crisp linen, right? Because it's not gonna have that stretch to it, so it's not gonna fit you the same, right? So obviously similar fabrics to what you're trying to accomplish. But also, I feel like people get really caught up with fabrics, at least from the questions I get and the comments I get. I feel like people are really concerned about, am I using the right kind of fabric? And like, for sure, there's some times where you could make the wrong choice, I guess. But I really feel like most of the time, if you're sticking especially with like woven cottons and linens are like 99% of what I use, because these are like the style of clothes that I make, right? If you love stretchy knit tank tops, then you're gonna get all knit cottons probably. Or if you like to make silky dresses, you're gonna get like satin and whatnot. But yeah, if you have a similar style to me, which you might, if you're here watching this, woven cottons and linens are great. And I have a highlight on my Instagram for like my top places that I usually buy from. Okay, I think that answers everything. I know I probably sound like a broken record, but I just want to leave you with the message that whatever you're doing, whatever you're attempting to sew, whatever skills you're hoping to learn and things you're trying out, you're doing great. And either you're gonna make super cute stuff or you're going to learn from the stuff that turns out ugly. Which, like, let's be real, the first dress that I ever drafted for myself, because my background is in baby clothes, and so the way that I drafted my patterns was really, really similar to what I just showed you by like tracing baby t-shirts and measuring baby dresses and whatever, and just like making my own dresses up. But the first time I ever made something for me, it was hideous. It was so bad. And because I'd had so much experience making baby clothes, I had like the expectation that it was going to come out super cute, because I'm like, I make dresses all the time. I'll make one for me. And it's like, oh, adult people are shaped way different, and you can't just like draw straight lines as if your body is a potato like potato babies are. Anyways, so if you hold the expectation that you are going to be amazing and the first thing you make is going to be beautiful, then you probably will be disappointed and you might give up. And I just need you to stick with it and try things multiple times. So final message, if you're leaving this video with, yeah, but what about this? But how do I do X? My question to you is, what do you think? What do you think you should try? And then try it and see how it goes. I'm proud of you. You're doing amazing. And let me know what other things you could use tutorials for.